Drill instructors slash drill sergeants of Reddit. What's the funniest thing you've seen a recruit do that you couldn't laugh at? In my basic training class, I was a squad leader, which is essentially just a person who does extra chores. Anyway, for reasons unknown, myself and the other squad leaders were doing push-ups in the drill sergeant's office. Now, when you do these push-ups, you eventually reach muscle failure, so you just sort of hang out there in the front leaning rest and try to bust out another push-up every few seconds or so. We're all in there dying, and the drill sergeant says to one of my buddies, "Private Hudson, tell me what's the difference between basic training and being in prison?" Without missing a beat, Private Hudson says, "Drill Sergeant, in prison they get to watch TV." The drill sergeant cracked a little bit of a smile and then told us to get up and get out of there. Private Hudson is spitting. As far as I'm concerned, 100% right. And hey, even the drill sergeant had respect for it. Story 2. Boot camp. Had a kid with glasses. Very young. Did not look like marine material. He kept glancing up at planes overhead during drill. DI noticed and asked him what he was looking at. Kid replies, "Airplanes, drill instructor." DI said, "Those planes are trying to invade, and only you can stop them. I want to hear you war cry at every plane until it leaves this depot." Remainder of phase 1 of boot camp consisted of this kid screaming at every plane overhead. Hilarity ensued. Story 3. We had this kid who kept peeing himself. One day after the range, he informs our DI that he had crapped himself right after showers. Squad base starts to hold back laughter. DI, "It's not funny." Awkward silence. "Okay, it's a little funny, but we aren't laughing." Man never cracked a smile during the whole thing. Story 4. Early in boot in MCRDSD, we were post-shower and at attention for the hygiene inspection, wearing nothing but skivvies and t-shirts. The DI is walking the line checking fingernails and whatnot, and one private's hard-on flops out of his skivvies right as the DI passes him. The DI stops, looks the private in the eye and says, "Private, I don't even like you. Much less like you that way. Now put that goddamn thing away before it goes off." The private in question turned purple with embarrassment, tried to stuff his little soldier back in his skivvies, but is getting flustered as the DI starts yelling at him for being an incompetent private, and that if he didn't get it stowed in 3 seconds, the private would be taking a 10-minute cold shower. Things like, "Do I have to hose you down like an excited chihuahua? Should I call the vet? Good God, private, is that how you greet your mother at night? Stow your gear, goddammit." Every other private in line was trying not to laugh, and the SDI had retreated to his office where we could hear him howling with laughter. The private finally gets his junk stowed, and the DI resumes inspection. You could see he was trying his damnedest not to bust out laughing. No one got much sleep that night. There were too many gigglers in their bunks and too many quiet one-liners. I have a feeling you guys are going to be hearing a lot of the same voice, by the way. I don't have a lot of drill sergeant voices. I'm sorry. Like, just listen to my voice. In that direction, I simply don't have much range. Sorry. Story 5. One recruit left his training guide just lying on his rack. My lead RDC decided this was punishable by making the recruit stand in the middle of our berthing, hold the training guide in the left hand, salute it with the right hand, and then bring it in and gently whisper, "I love you, training guide. I'm sorry I left you out. I'll never leave you lying around again." That crap was hilarious, especially because we were all put at attention while he did it for 45-ish minutes. Story 6. In Navy boot camp, they called forced PT beatings. Everyone knows what a beating is. Navy doesn't have drill instructors, they call them RDCs, Recruit Division Commanders. One day, standing in ranks, the RDC is going around asking random trivia questions about a test we had to take to make sure we had been studying. He gets to a guy who was eccentric to say the least. This is about a month and a half into boot camp. RDC asks the question, guy gets it wrong, so RDC yells, "Nope, wrong, beat yourself." Literally everyone knew this meant start doing push-ups, so the expectation is that he'll start doing push-ups as the RDC moves to the next guy to ask a question. I was standing across from the guy and he had a confused look on his face. He looked at his own hand for 5 seconds, then hauled off and slapped himself in the face. It made a loud crack sound. He got himself good. I cracked and chuckled, trying to keep composure at attention. The RDC looked to me, then realized why I laughed, and turned to the slapping sound. He asked him if he had slapped himself, and the guy says, You told me to beat myself." Cue the entire barracks cracking up. It was a single moment during boot camp where the curtain was raised and a moment of unadulterated levity came over everyone. The RDC couldn't stop laughing, so the tough guy jerk persona melted away for a good minute, until he regained composure and made us all do push-ups. The push-ups were an easy price to pay for that moment. Story 6. Not me, but I had a great team sergeant who had a floater, wonky eye, and he was blind in it from an injury in Iraq. So one eye was dead on and worked fine, but he had this one uncle ruckus eye that just did its own thing. He was a very physically imposing man, with that classic drill sergeant bass-filled voice, and his crazy eye just added to it, and he knew. He told a story about his time as a drill sergeant when 2 privates had sat down on fire watch, and were kinda just being real lackadaisical about their duties when he found them. So he starts giving them the business, classic Full Metal Jacket style. And finally, when he's ending his rant right before he's about to smoke them for who knows how long, one of the offending privates just says, "Drill Sergeant, are you yelling at us or the water fountain?" It stopped him dead in his rage, and he just walked away. Story 8. Never was a drill sergeant, but when I was going through a US Army Infantry School, 2004, we were taking showers, when one of the drills came in and called us to toe the line. When I got out of the shower, I found someone had stolen my PT uniform and towel, so I grabbed my shaving cream and covered my dong in cream and then walked out to my bunk. The drill came up to ask me what the hell I thought I was doing. I told him my clothes and towel were gone, so I did the next best thing. He said, "You know what? You're gonna do alright in the infantry." Story 9. Story from my wife while she was in BCT. They are eating chow one day early on, maybe first or second day out of reception, and they hear a drill sergeant yelling, "Why the hell are you eating salad with a spoon?" Apparently in reception they'd been told to not bother with forks since they had 5 minutes to eat their meal. Dude wanted a salad, so he decided, screw it, I'm eating salad with a spoon. Hilarity ensued. Drill instructors let everyone know that not using forks is a dumb freaking rule, and whoever told them that is stupid. Story 10. We had 2 5'1" stocky blonde guys named Johnson in our company one cycle. Different platoons, no relation at all, but they looked really similar. One day during grass week, a couple of J-hats made them face each other and go back and forth screaming, "You're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." "No, screw you, you're not Johnson, I'm Johnson." You have absolutely no clue how hard it was not to break into a million pieces after about 5 minutes of that. I see no other reason to make people do this than pure comedy. So clearly the J-hats, whatever that means, I don't know, had a sense of humor at the very least. Story 11. We weren't allowed to talk during chow at the galley. You had to point at what you wanted another recruit to pass, and they had to silently pass it. One recruit wanted a napkin and pointed. The other recruit asked, "This?" The CC's, Coast Guard DS, immediately came over, circling him like sharks, screaming at him. They made him put like 10 saltines in his mouth and chew until his mouth was full, then asked the first recruit if he wanted a napkin again. He could barely get it out, spitting pieces of cracker everywhere. Then they screamed at the first recruit to answer him, but we were all silently cracking up. The exchange sounded like this. Pieces of saltine flying out. "Answer him!" And the other guy cracking up, almost crying. No, thank you. It was the best. Sadly, I don't have 10 saltines on hand right now, or I would have done a much better job with that. Sorry. Story 12. Not in boot camp, but in a school setting in the military. In formation one morning, I heard a slap, and a guy had gotten a fly or a mosquito or something. The instructor started screaming that corpsmen do not take lives unless defending themselves, or defending their Marines or patients. He had just taken the life of an unarmed friendly and will give it a proper burial, so he made us all dig a human-sized grave while the sailor, who took the fly's life, stood there watching with a dead fly in hand. We gave it a funeral and everything without honors, and had to fill in the hole. We kinda hated that guy for a while. Story 13. Not a DI. When I went through basic, they gave everyone a flashlight with a lime green yellow thing on the end that you had to have with you in the morning for PT. Well, one individual forgot his when we had all lined up in the morning, and didn't say anything until we walked over to the PT pad. The TI began to berate him, calling him an idiot, making him run back to the bunks and retrieve it. Before he leaves, the TI yells, "If anyone stops you, just tell them you're an idiot." Well, a TI was across the street and saw him running back to the bunks and saw the trainee all by himself, so he starts laying into him. We could all hear him on the PT pad until the trainee got a chance to respond with, "Sir, trainee so-and-so reports as ordered. I am an idiot." The TI walked away and didn't say anything. Edit. I have another story actually about this exact airman. Near the end of basic training, depending on your TI, you might get what is called an amnesty hour. It's everyone who has been in basic with you and your TI basically talking to you like a normal person again. Well, our TI opened the floor for questions, and the first kid to raise his hand was the kid who forgot the flashlight. During all of basic when I was there, a rumor was going around that a TI had posed for Playboy. Now, it was a rumor, but no one could go on a computer to Google it because it's BMT. The airman stood up and asked, straight face, "Sir, is it true a TI posed for Playboy?" Our TI just laughed and confirmed the rumor. And he asked again, "Sir, did you meet this TI?" Our TI responds with, "No, but if I did, I would be tapping that." Without missing a beat, this short, skinny kid from Tennessee says, "Thank you for not hitting it so that the rest of us don't fall in it." I cried laughing. Am I stupid? I don't get that last joke. In the comments, call me stupid and then explain it to me. And for the record, you only have permission to call me stupid if you explain it after. Don't just be rude to me. Or like, do I guess. It's the YouTube comments. It's the Wild West out there. Story 14. I was a super light sleeper during basic. One night I woke up for no reason. The sleeping bay was dark except for the light by the desk where the two soldiers on fire guard were supposed to be awake and alert. Both of them were leaning back in their chairs, dead asleep. I started to throw my covers off to go wake them up. If a drill sergeant came through and caught the fire guards sleeping, we would all pay. But then I heard a slow, scraping sound to my right off in the darkness. I froze and heard it again, closer. A few heartbeats later, I almost screamed out loud as I saw the sharp, intense face of our Samoan drill sergeant in the darkness. His face was covered in full camo. He was low crawling underneath the line of bunk beds towards the fire guard. He had a bayonet in between his teeth. We locked eyes and he silently raised one finger to his mouth, signaling for silence. I nodded and sat back to watch the show as the drill sergeant resumed his low crawl under and past my bunk in the direction of the sleeping guards. Story 15. I work at basic training ranges, and we had a drill sergeant yell at his soldier while they were getting ready to go down a buddy live fire exercise. The soldier froze and started crying. This 18-year-old kid was in tears for getting yelled at. The DS yelled at him some more and he finally gave up because the kid wouldn't stop crying. So he made him scoop tears off his face and put them in his pockets till he filled his pockets up with tears. He did this for like an hour. It was hilarious. Story 16. Not a drill instructor, but when I was going through basic, it was one of the trainees' birthdays when we went to the gas chamber for the experience of crowd control gas. This trainee happened to be Jewish. So first thing in the morning when we have the little huddle about what's going to happen that day, the TI asks if there are any questions. Trainee Goldberg, not his real name, but this dude was built like Goldberg, raises his hand and says, "Sir, don't you think it's a little screwed up to send a Jew to the gas chamber on his birthday?" And everyone bust up laughing, including our TI. But the story doesn't end there. We go to the dining facility for breakfast, and as he's going through the line, our TI yells out, "Trainee Goldberg, why don't you tell the other TIs what you told me this morning?" With a straight-faced, Trainee Goldberg says, "Oh, I was just telling our TI how it's pretty screwed up. The Air Force is sending a Jew to the gas chamber on his birthday." All the TIs at the long table just fell silent, almost scared, and our TI just bust up laughing so hard. Trainee Goldberg, despite being 6'2" and solid muscle, was perhaps the funniest guy in our flight. He now owns a few gyms in his home state. Awesome guy. Story 17. So when you start basic, your body doesn't know how to handle no sugar, caffeine, rigorous exercise, and sleeping schedules, so it's in shock. With this shock, crapping becomes a problem for a few. Well, every DI after the first week is required to ask if everyone has taken a crap, and from there he assigns one recruit to track who has crapped and who has not. I crap you not, pun intended. We had one guy who would stand in the barracks at the end of the night rolling off names of people who hadn't crapped yet. Finally, we have one guy who is still on there after 2 weeks. And the DI tells him to go to the doctor. The doctor gives him a get-out-of-jail-free card, essentially saying that at any point, he says the magical words, "I got it, crap," and he can get out of any situation. Well, Recruit Can't Crap, we'll call him, gets the smart idea that he's going to play his new trump card as long as possible. Every time that we're getting grilled, "I got it, crap," comes ringing in from the back of the formation. This probably happened 6 times until our DI caught on. Finally, our DI devises a plan. When Recruit Can't Crap goes into the bathroom, he's going to have a couple of us hold onto his legs and slide him into the stall all Exorcist style. The time comes and Recruit Can't Crap excuses himself. We all follow our DI into the bathroom and slide under there like he's the spawn of Satan. This catches Recruit Can't Crap by surprise. He doesn't know what the hell is going on, as the DI is utterly berating him about lying and using this as an excuse to sit on the toilet. Then we hear a very audible, "Oh crap," from the stall. The DI scared the recruit so much, he actually took a crap right then and there. The DI made every recruit look at it, and we played taps for it as we flushed it down the toilet. Story 18. Just got off the trail a month ago. The biggest standout for me was while conducting a urinalysis, UA, we have a set of things we tell the soldiers to do. Wash your hands without soap, open the cup, place it on the urinal. At that point, I usually say, situate yourself, and I think you can take the rest from there. This kid at that point tried to climb on top of the urinal to fill the cup, still placed on top of it. I had to yell at him to stop and tell him to pick up the cup to urinate in it. I almost had to walk out because I was going to lose it. In probably 1,000 UAs that I've had to be there for, I've never had a kid climb the urinal. Edit. Thought of some more to add. One of the soldiers somehow got a Forest Ranger hat, looks pretty close to a DS campaign hat. He then started raiding soldiers' rooms with soldiers in them, while his buddy recorded them on his phone. This is AIT, so they have phones and semi-private 3-man rooms. We ended up finding the videos uploaded on Facebook and figured out who it was who took the hat and disciplined him. However, the videos were funny as hell, and his impressions of some of us were pretty spot on. And now, a fun thing I used to do to mess with them. So I was a DS in AIT, Advanced Individual Training, at the Army, one of the first since they brought them back. In AIT, they have a bit more freedom and they can have certain things in their rooms. One of the things they like getting and usually hid in a locker would be a Google Mini or an Echo Dot. When doing room inspections of a soldier that had a crap room, I would randomly say things like, "Okay Google, set an alarm for 1 a.m. or "Alexa, play Katy Perry at 2 a.m. I'd have super confused soldiers in the morning at physical training wondering why they had random alarms going off all night. Story 19. A story from my perspective as a recruit in Navy boot camp. We had an inspection the following day, so our chief was going around inspecting inside everyone's rack to make sure it was squared away. Eventually, he made it over to my section. He was checking the rack, bunk bed that opens up beside me, and had it propped open so I couldn't see his face and kind of forgot he was there. He's searching through this guy's stuff and sees his small gloves. He asks, "You know what they say about small gloves?" Now, keep in mind, I don't think any of my RDCs heard me talk until this point, and I said, without any hesitation, "Oh, I know that's not true. I wear a size 12 boot, but I can tell you right now, I don't have a size 12 dong." And my chief slammed the rack shut and looked at me. "What the hell?" He then stormed off into the fishbowl, and all you could hear was him trying to hold back his laughter in the office with the 2 petty officers. Story 20. Whenever a recruit would let one rip, we would make them turn on the vacuum cleaner, which meant we would yell, "Who the hell just crapped themselves? This recruit is attempting to attack our olfactory sense. Platoon, turn on the vacuum," which would be followed by, "Turn on the vacuum, aye aye, sir," and then all the recruits would suck in through their mouths as hard as they could. However, one time we had a recruit who immediately answered when we asked who crapped themselves that, "This recruit crapped himself, sir." Turns out recruit Jones crapped himself during a late night drill session in 3rd phase. By then, recruits are disciplined and almost always put the mission first, even if that mission is just executing left face march, without asking to go to the head. Poor kid sat in his own crap for almost 2 hours. Story 21. I have 2. We had a recruit night who just couldn't do anything right. He couldn't even put on camo paint. So we were out in the field and our DIs had him completely black his face with it. I'm talking ears, inside his nose, even his lips. Then they made him walk around with another recruit whose name was also Knight and happened to be black and pointed at him while saying, "Recruit Knight is as black as night." I saw quite a few other DIs chuckle at that. Then on our last day before graduation, our J-Hat came in and told us we were our DI's first actual platoon as a DI, and he was going to wake us up on the morning of graduation. So he hatched the plan, and that morning, when he came out and screamed, "Get online!" we all ran to the end of our tracks, but half of the squad bay was wearing togas, and the other half butt naked. He basically did a double take and bust out laughing. Then we did push-ups for like 10 minutes. Story 22. Not a DS, but went to Army Basic. I was in the chow line, nut to butt, looking at the back of the guy's head in front of me. All of a sudden, I can feel one of my drill sergeants breathing on me over the separation wall, and he yells, "OP, who is your daddy?" To which I responded, of course, "You are, drill sergeant." My other DS sprints over and says, "Oh yeah? What does that make me then?" And all I thought to say was, my mommy, drill sergeant? Every DS in the chow hall was dying, and I got the dog crap smoked out of me outside. When I was in AIT to be a medic at Fort San, we had to toe to line for bed check. Stand on a yellow line by your bunk in PTs/shower shoes holding your ID card with your tags hanging out. We used to screw with each other hard in our bay, and right before toe to line, one of my buddies hid one of my shower shoes. So I'm in a rush thinking, oh god, okay, I'll just wear the one. So I'm standing at half attention in one flip-flop, and my bare foot is just kind of tucked away behind me. The guy checking comes up and just looks down directly at my feet, crosses his arms and says, "OP, what in Sam hell are you doing?" All I could get out to say was, "Sergeant, I couldn't find my other shower shoe for bed check." And I think he'd been saving this one because he started to smirk and just yelled, "God damn it, OP. You're more ate up than a chocolate dong in a gay bar," triggering giggles and snickers all throughout the bay. Thankfully, our school cadre were a lot more chill than drill sergeants. So there's some posts in this thread that have mentioned the funny person at basic or whatever. I think OP was the funny person. Like, what do you mean you called a drill sergeant your mommy? Man, what are you doing? Like, you're hilarious, but you are asking for trouble. Story 23. A pair of battle buddies were late for formation. Everyone was lined up waiting for them to get dressed, and they ran down about 3 seconds apart from each other, which was a big mistake. First one runs out. Drill screams, "Freeze, motherfricker! Aren't you supposed to have someone with you?" And without skipping a beat, the private replied, "The force is always with me, drill sergeant." After thinking about it for a second, he told the private to shut up and fall in line. His buddy, meanwhile, had made his way outside and was trying, poorly, to sneak in a line. The drill sergeant sees the private sneaking. "Well, now hold on a freaking second. Who's this freaking big shot over here walking around like he owns the place? You the new top? You think you're special?" Private says, "No, drill sergeant, I'm the force." Everyone, including the lead drill, lost their minds for 2 seconds. Story 24. Not a DS myself, but I was in during 05, and we had a guy who was 7th generation army, everyone was high ranking, blah blah blah. Compensation for his little dong, basically. Mom and dad were supposedly E9s. Turns out they were just E6 and E7. Important because it sets up his history of lying. First night he cries all freaking night. He starts to do it again. DS makes us all stand around his bunk and sing him to sleep. Because what kind of man signs up for the military if they know they're gonna miss mama and dada? So he was obviously a lost kid. But the point of our story is one day, formation on the way to the chow hall. DS is being really nice and shooting the crap with us, taking questions about being deployed, what AIT was like, etc. Suddenly, our hero decides the most brilliant idea ever. Run up and snatch the DS's hat and run away with it. Now, for those of you who don't know, you do not get that hat easily. DSs go through a whole nother form of training for DS, like basic all over again, so you do not screw with the hat. It's a major sign of disrespect, and this dude just took it and ran. DS talks for about 3 more seconds and suddenly stops as the situation catches up with him. His eyes go wide with shock as he raises his hand and passes it over his head from front to back. I swear to God, I was right in front of him and saw his eyes go from nice guy to murder.exe, and he booked it after private. Somehow being 7th generation army, he did not know how to run, but the DS sure freaking did. Caught him in no time and then rolled down a hill. We hear some hilarious sounds and the DS comes up. He very carefully puts his hat back on and looks at us. "Who the hell saw what happened?" No one dares to respond. Apparently, that's what he wanted. "Okay, you have permission to laugh for exactly 10 seconds. Then we're gonna get some chow. I'm going to have someone pick up Private No Nuts, and you're all going to give a statement. The absolute mother-freaking truth." Side note, later on found out he was recycled so much during basic he was sent to RHC. I forget what it stood for, but we all referred to it as Return Home Company. While he was out processing for a less than honorable discharge, but his parents had convinced those in charge to take their time so he could learn a lesson. Good times. Story 25. When getting to the depot, you get rid of all personal items aside from your wallet, phone book, glasses, and religious items. It was second phase and we were drilling on the parade deck. We finish and are marching back to the house when our DI catches someone smiling. He says, "Oh good, something's funny. Empty out your pockets." Recruit empties his pocket contents, and he has a pen, knowledge card, and lo and behold, a dollar bill. Our DI was dumbfounded. He asked, "Why the hell do you have money? You going to the strip club after this?" The recruit responded, I heard we get to use the vending machine if we do well." Story 26. On day 2 of basic training at Lackland AFB, my flight was returning with our newly issued gear after having our heads shaved and other hurry up and wait tasks. Our TI told us to go upstairs and stand at attention by our beds. We ran up there tired after attempting to march what felt like 2 miles each way in the August Texas heat. We're all standing there waiting for whatever's gonna happen next. After about 5 minutes, Donnie Barnes says, "That Sergeant Gates is a jerk, am I right?" And you would not believe what happened next. As soon as Barnes said Gates, the locker directly behind Barnes pops open with a crack. Barnes is frozen solid. Out of the locker pops one leg after another, and the 3 taps as Sergeant Gates walks out of the locker and puts his mouth directly next to Barnes's ear and shouts in his gravelly voice, "On your face!" We did so many push-ups. What do you mean the sergeant was in a locker behind him? You're telling me this dude had a real life, "he's right behind me, isn't he" moment? Come on, what is this? Also, just side note, my sergeant voices or whatever, they're gonna get worse as time goes on. My voice is hurtin'. Well, not hurting, but it can't take much more. So, if you're wondering, that's why. Story 27. Wasn't a drill sergeant, but was a lieutenant in basic training company. Yeah, I know. During final inspection, I had to go down the ranks with one of the drill sergeants and inspect the soldiers one by one while they stood at attention in their Class A uniforms. I had to inspect their appearance, ask some questions about their weapon or the general orders, stuff like that, while they stood there at attention. While moving down the line, I turned to face one soldier. There he was standing at attention, proud as can be, but his uniform had no brass buttons. My best guess is someone stole them the night before, but there he was standing with his perfect military bearing. I imagine he was hoping I wouldn't notice or something. I did everything I could to keep my military bearing because I wanted to bust out laughing so badly. I was afraid if I opened my mouth to ask a question, I would start laughing, so I looked at him all mean-like, which is laughable itself, sighed, shook my head slowly in disappointment, and moved on to the next. Story 28. I was going through Air Force basic training, and when on guard duty, if an unauthorized person wanted to be led into the bunks, you had to report it to your drill sergeant. Our sister flight's drill sergeant came up to me while I was on guard and requested entry, so I reported to my sergeant, and he had me ask the other a series of questions. This particular sergeant had a bushy mustache, so one question I had to ask was, in what year was Magnum PI cancelled? He dropped out of view from the window laughing, came back up and yelled, "It was never cancelled because I'm still here." It took everything I had not to crack up. Story 30. Not a drill sergeant, but some private in my platoon who we'll call CF, and that's another story in itself, somehow got the bright idea of eating everyone's MRE gum. Well, I think it's a laxative. Always cleared me up. He then started bragging about how big his crap was. I mean, I saw it. Pretty impressive. And someone got the idea of putting bets on how big it was. CF got some rubber gloves, put on his pro mask, and picks it up. A 13-inch crap, and he made $175 off of it. Next morning before PT, word made it to our company first sergeant. He absolutely lost his mind. Tacked on some extra duty. In our bay, our drill sergeant joked and laughed with us about it. Man, I missed the army. There were some total bullcrap things that happened, but brotherhood is what I missed the most. Story 31. While in basic, we had a female that loved to smile. She was just a happy person in general. Well, my TI, training instructor, came in and she caught the female trainee smiling. TI didn't like smiling. She walked up to the female trainee and yelled at her to wipe the smile off her face. Female trainee stopped smiling. The TI continued to yell at her, telling her to literally wipe it off with her hand. Trainee does so. Then she's told to throw it on the ground and stomp on it and scream, "Die, smile, die," as loud as she could. The female trainee stood there for a second before following through. Her tiny little voice cracks as she tried to yell, "Die, smile, die." Oh, it took everything I had to not bust out laughing. Story 32. I was duty NCO for the platoon I was instructing on the final night of basic training, the night of the function. I'd got them all into bed and was doing the final rounds to make sure they were all where they were supposed to be, and I came across an empty bed. Engage angry TAD instructor mode. First section, where the hell is Recruit C? I'm here, Corporal, in Recruit B's bed. Well, where the hell is Recruit B? I'm also in my bed, Corporal. Recruit C, please move back to your bed. And I remind all recruits, there will be no fraternizing on RTFACB training courses. Apparently, they just thought it was a funny joke, but watching them separately sit up in the same bed one after the other was unexpected. Story 33. Infantry, Benning 2005. Had a guy in my platoon that wrote a letter home saying he got shot in the IBA. His mom was a first sergeant, funnily enough. However, drill sergeant intercepted the letter and read it to everyone. Then another guy in the platoon was a great lyricist. He free-versed, "Who's that man in the pink beret? He got shot in the IBA." Drill overhears it and it became our new marching cadence. We also had a drill sergeant get fired for hitting a private's privates and causing him to urinate blood. He would always go around with the platoon's guide on and hit the guys in the nuts. He never did it to his own platoon, though. Honestly, he was one of my favorite drill sergeants. Story 34. Was never a DI, but I can pass along a classic boot camp story. I was in the Navy, and in the Navy, your final inspection as a division is before the division officer, which is usually some junior office puke that got assigned the job, but we didn't know any better. Anyway, before the inspection, one of our RDCs, that's what we call the DI in the Navy, found a locker out of sorts and decided to beat us in our dress blues. That was not fun, let me tell you. Wool uniforms. If we lost our cover, we got beat more. It was bad. Anyway, the DO rolls in for inspection, walks up to the first dude in formation, and pukes. However, this guy was a freaking genius. He puked down the t-shirt in his dress blues, saving the DO from getting puked on, and us from getting beat even more. The division officer was so impressed at this dude's military bearing that he called the inspection right then and there. 5.0 sailors all around. We still got beat that night, but that guy was a hero. Story 35. I was the private. We were conducting NBC, nuclear, biological / chemical warfare training, and had to go to the gas chamber with our gas masks on to learn confidence in our equipment. Or, alternatively, pain if you do it wrong. Anyway, there's this big freaking sign that says, gas chamber. So I go up to one of the drill sergeants and requested permission to speak. He angrily asked, "What, private?" And I was like, drill sergeant, not for nothing, but I'm Jewish and not going anywhere near this freaking thing. He quickly turned around and I could tell he was holding in his laughter. When he finally could talk with a straight face, he simply turned back around and told me to fall back in. I'm sure he had fun relaying my self-deprecating joke to the rest of the drill sergeants. Story 36. When I went through Air Force Basic, we had water canteens that we brought everywhere we went. I mean, it was San Antonio around August to September. We were in a class one day and protocol has you keep your canteen by your feet and not on the table. We got up for lunch and so like you're supposed to, everyone brings their canteens. We eat lunch and then we come straight back. We were about to get started again when somebody left their canteen on their desk. Fairly calmly, the MTI, military training instructor, reminded him to put his canteen by his feet. Then he says, "Actually, I want you to leave your canteen on your desk. I want everyone to put their canteens on their desks." Everyone does so, and we're all waiting. Then he says, "Trainee, why isn't your canteen on your desk?" This other trainee shuffles around in his chair a bit and replies, Sir, Trainee Snuffles reports as ordered. I left it here before we went to lunch, and now it's missing." MTI, cutting him a bit short, says, "Yes, I know. I have it right here," pulling out the canteen. "Do you know what this represents, trainee? This holds water. Water brings life. You're saying you forgot your source of life?" Yes, sir. Little info note here. Every trainee keeps these little pieces of paper called 341s, and they're taken by MTIs for either good behavior or screw-ups. Usually screw-ups. Enough of them could result in you getting recycled into a previous week of training with an entirely new flight of people. "Alright then, trainee. I want you to come down and get your canteen. I'm curious. Have you seen Indiana Jones?" Yes, sir. "You remember how he gets the treasure? He swaps it with another object, doesn't he?" Yes, sir. "Not just any object, though. Usually it's of relatively the same weight, right? How many 341s do you think it would take to equal the weight of this here canteen?" He briefly shakes it around, revealing quite a bit of water is in it still. "Maybe 5 or 6, he said, not sure of how this was going to go down. 5 or 6? Are you sure?" This went on for a bit, and then he agreed upon, 3. "Alright, come down here and show me how Mr. Jones does it in the movie." His butt hurries to the front. Everyone else is thinking this is the kind of crap we've been waiting for. He does his thing, but he doesn't do it quick enough, so he took an extra 341. Funniest crap I ever saw in basic. Absolute madman of an MTI. Never saw him again after that class, but holy crap, he was a legend. Story 37. Not a drill, and this kind of turns the question on its head. Funny thing a DS did, but had this experience 2 weeks before graduation. Army Infantry Benning. Our senior drill was having his sort of stern pep talk with us because he didn't think we were pushing ourselves hard enough. He was fully in drill sergeant mode, which wasn't always the case that late in the OSUT cycle. 14 weeks, basic training plus infantry training. As we're getting lectured, he stops in his tracks and stares at one guy in particular. He shouts, "Who the hell are you?" The rest went like this, pretty much verbatim. Me, drill sergeant?" "Yes, you. Who the hell are you?" "I'm Private White, drill sergeant." "Private White? Are you in the wrong bay, Private White?" Now, we're all a bit fidgety and confused because Private White was definitely not in the wrong bay. "No, drill sergeant?" We could all hear the question. Was White about to get his world screwed up for some reason? "Private White." The DI kind of chewed on the name, then added, "When did you get here?" "I've been here the whole time, drill sergeant." 3 months in, and our DI had no recollection of this kid. We weren't sure what was going to happen at that point. I think I saw the DI's lips twitch, but he didn't crack a smile. He did, however, end his talk and move us on to hygiene. I don't even know if being that forgettable in a platoon is a good thing or a bad thing. It's gotta be a good thing, right? Because why else would you be memorable to a drill instructor? Only because you've screwed up a lot, right? So not being remembered at all isn't a bad thing, I think. Story 38. At the Qual Range on Benning, March 2009. Cycle is almost over and we're all pumped to move into OSUT/AIT. I was behind the firing line with the rest of the jackasses eating chow. I had a DS that was built like Tyron Woodley, with scars all over his face and neck. Told us he was in Operation Anaconda as a private. and did multiple tours in Iraq. He had a voice like a bulldog swallowed gravel, was always angry, and was built like a Greek god. A truly magnificent specimen. Anyway, at the beginning of basic, he once said that the gravest sin we could ever make was to fart in his presence. So I'm sitting there Indian style behind the firing line, unapologetically, absolutely face-banging a bag of chili mac when all of a sudden, I let a silent one squeak out. Except that I was still wearing ear protection, and it was more like the Horn of Gondor calling for aid. This dude snaps his head around like he heard me open up a bag of tropical flavor Skittles, also prohibited, and just points at me like a giant black techno Viking. This guy heard my thunderous butt bellowing through his own ear protection while on the firing line, which, by the way, super impressive on multiple levels. What did I do? Oh, the only logical thing, of course. I started making raspberry sounds with a mouth full of chili mac, like I was B-Rabbit, beatboxing for the Underground Championship. He put me in the front-leaning rest for the entire time we were out there. While he was coaching, my non-integrity-having butt was laying flat on my gut. When I even had a hunch that he was going to turn around, I would stick my butt in the air in the proper modified resting position. He would point to the ground, I'd bang out like 5 or 6, and when he turned back around, I'd lay flat again. 3 hours later, when everyone qualled except me, of course, he told me to recover and calmly said to not crap in his mouth ever again, private. Again, I was like 100 meters behind the firing line, but okay, I guess. Story 39. I wasn't the DS, but the trainee. I was in the shower and I heard someone yell my name. I thought it was one of the guys in my platoon, so I responded, "What? Can I get 5 freaking minutes in peace?" Next thing I heard was the unmistakable voice of one of our DS shouting, "What the hell did you just say?" and the sound of boots stomping towards me. I began apologizing as fast as possible, standing butt naked at parade rest. He said if I ever raised my voice again, he'd be back naked next time for some action, aka assaulting my butt. He then told me I had a letter and to come grab it from his office and walked off. Story 40. A fellow trainee dropped his cup while in line at the DFAC. Senior DS hears it and yells out, "Whose cup was it, huh?" So the kid goes to parade rest and says it was his. And SDS replies with, "What did that cup ever do to you? Apologize to that cup. Say you're sorry." He starts with an, "I'm sorry," but was told it wasn't good enough. So the trainee says, "I'm sorry for dropping you, cup. I didn't mean to." And SDS then tells him, "Now name that cup. Give it a name." The cup's name was Robert. A few minutes later, someone else dropped a cup, same deal. After that, some kid dropped his salad, and SDS shouted, "How are you gonna apologize to that?" Story 41. So not a DS, but this is from my time in basic, and it's gonna be long, by the way. My battle buddy got caught getting head from a female in our platoon. The DS didn't interrupt. He just walked out of the laundry room where they decided to do the deed. He did wait outside for my battle buddy and the other soldier to leave the laundry room. All he did was tell my battle buddy to come get me so we could have a chat with the first sergeant. We go into first sergeant's office and our DS just starts laying into the guy. A few minutes later, the DS pauses, sticks his nose against my battle buddy's, looks him in the eye, and in this low, menacing voice asks, "Where did you nut, Private?" It took every ounce of willpower I had to not double over with laughter. Battle buddy was gobsmacked. He started stuttering and couldn't get a full word out. Then, after being silent the entire time, our first sergeant hauls it across the room. He yells, "You freaking heard him, you hard-donged freaking waste of a good mouth. Where did you freaking nut?" Battle buddy starts crying. In between sobs, he blurts out, "In her mouth, DS." I lost it. DS lost it. FS lost it. Good times all around. I don't really understand military culture, but what I do get is that if anyone intimidating enough yelled at me, I would also probably cry. Great reason why I couldn't be in the military. But this question? I don't even know what's going on. This doesn't sound like it could be real, but you know what? Is weird enough that I'm sure it is. Story 42. Not a drill sergeant, but going through boot camp, I heard some great ones. During the beginning of basic, we were monitored while we ate, which included being told when to begin consuming and when to stop. We had this chubby kid who was having a particularly rough time, and you could see he was already close to breaking. So we are told our chow time is up, and we all instantly get up from our seats, form a line next to the wall at the end of our tables, and clear our trays into a trash can at the end. Chubby kid doesn't join us, but instead chooses to sit and finish his meal. He is completely alone in the middle of the mess hall. A drill instructor comes up and immediately begins berating him. Chubby kid looks the drill instructor dead in the eyes while sitting, and has a completely insane look. In his hand, he has a butter knife clenched in what I can only describe as a threatening manner. Without missing a beat, the drill instructor yelled at him, "What are you gonna do with that, Tubby? Spread me on your freaking toast?" Story 43. I was in Navy boot camp, and one of our RDCs was giving some kind of instruction/order to the 4 girls who did the in-house laundry in the laundry room. He finished speaking, and you hear the following: "Yes, petty officer. Yes, petty officer. Yes, petty officer. Okie dokie." Everyone froze, stared at the door where we could see P.O. Cobble just standing there, looking like a vein was about to burst in his neck. We thought he was going to explode with rage. Instead, he clenched his jaw, turned on his heel, and walked out faster than I'd ever seen anyone move in my life. He barely managed to get into the private office before he completely broke up in hysterical laughter. We could just barely hear it through the walls. The one who said it was affectionately named Lightbulb Head, and just about all of my favorite stories involve her in some way. Story 45. Several years ago, I had a soldier who was taking food back to our barracks. Fellow platoon drill sergeant found it and told me about it. Called the entire platoon downstairs, formed them up, and inquired to the entire formation about this red DFAC apple in my hand. Soldier confessed immediately. I asked him why. He replies with, "I was hungry, drill sergeant." I follow up with, "Okay, private, I'm going to make sure you don't go to bed hungry. Eat this apple." Bring him to the front, give him the apple, then turn around to address the platoon. Commence to dusting the crap out of this platoon. I'm trying to break their bodies down as quickly as possible. Inform him they will keep going as he slowly takes his first bite. By now, I'm excited. "Oh, take your time." Only a few minutes later, "Drill sergeant, I'm done." I ask where the core is. "I ate it, drill sergeant." By now, I'm in disbelief, and search in throwing distance for the core. There's nothing. I ask him why he ate the core, and he says, "Because you told me to eat the apple, drill sergeant." This terrified man ate the entire freaking apple. I mean that green leafy crap, stem, the crunchy crap for the seeds, and the seeds. I stopped everything and told everyone to disappear immediately. I couldn't believe it, nor have I seen anything like it before or after. I have a ton of stories, but this one always brings tons of laughter. This guy heard the stories about one guy getting the whole group punished and did not want to be that guy. He was like, "I know what I gotta do." And by God, he did it. Well done, man. Story 46. Not a drill sergeant, but something funny mine said. Little bit of background. Week 0 of basic. Slipped in the shower because of the stupid shower slippers that they issued. Split my head open pretty good. Granted, it's only like the second night. Had to go to the ER, all that jazz. Fast forward to the end of basic, we're all lined up in formation and getting our uniforms inspected before we go out on town pass. As my drill sergeant comes up to me, he asks me, "What'd your mom say when you busted your nugget?" "Sir, she was mad I didn't tell her sooner." He finishes his look over my uniform and exclaims, "My baby!" in his best girly voice as he marches away. Last I ever saw of him. Story 47. Not a drill sergeant or even a sergeant. I served my 2 years in the Singapore Armed Forces for my national service. During field camp, a 5 days, 4-night camp out in the field, basic military training, we just finished our training and were gathered to have our lunch. Right after lunch, we usually check our equipment, like our rifles and magazines, to make sure nothing was missing, and reported to a guy in our platoon who will report to the sergeants. Everyone reported no missing items, but the sergeant major walked over from his tent and shouted, "You all confirm no missing items? Want to check again?" Well, still no missing items. "Then why is there an extra rifle in my tent?" That's when the dude in my section stands up and says it was his rifle. We all cringed and asked why the hell he said nothing was missing. "My magazine, gas rag, and muzzle aren't missing from my rifle." "Yeah, but your freaking rifle is missing." I'm sure the sergeant major had a good time making us do push-ups in the mud after lunch. Story 48. Not an instructor, but I have an ex who was in the Coast Guard. Best story he had was about him. They were wearing some short shorts, think soccer shorts, and a girl noticed one of his balls hanging out. Lo and behold, my ex, in his rush to get dressed, forgot underwear. She snickered, and when the instructor figured out what was so funny, the solution was funnier. They both had to come forward, face to face about a foot apart. The instructor had her command my ex to hoist up his shorts. So this 5'4" girl has to yell, "Higher!" with a straight face over and over. Eventually, once my ex's bits and pieces are out, the instructor calls a random recruit to give his opinion. The recruit turns and yells, according to my ex, "Sir, he has nothing to be ashamed of and should love the body God gave him, sir." Apparently, not everybody was able to hold their laughter, and the whole group was punished. Well, that recruit for sure is an absolute homie, I know that much. I'm pretty sure I also know that this is just some sort of harassment in a workplace. I don't know the rules in the Army. This sounds illegal to me, though, to be honest. I don't know, the Army has a completely different culture and set of rules, so I'm not gonna try to pass off any judgment. Don't love the vibe though, personally. Story 49. The guys in my flight had a food eating competition. The loser had to walk up to our flight commander and yell, "I lost the glutton bowl, cuckoo cachoo!" Absolutely hysterical, but poor guy paid for that severely. Another time, they used to take me off base for religious services with only 2 to 3 others in all of the camp. The drill instructor always got us fed and even once took us to McDonald's and bought us McFlurries. The last week we were there, the other girls in my flight who went on base for services told me, "Oh, you'll regret missing our service. They gave everyone a chocolate chip cookie today." The drill instructor, every time he saw me on base after this, would always pull me out of formation and ask questions such as, perfect weather for a McFlurry, isn't it, cadet? Story 50. One dude forgot his shower shoes in med hold, so instead of going back downstairs shower was broken, so we had to go upstairs to an unused dorm. He's advised by a fellow trainee to wear his socks to the latrine, take them off, shower, and put them back on to minimize his contact with that disgusting shower floor. As the dorm was unused, it wasn't cleaned regularly. This guy was kind of slow, so he wore his knee-high, white as snow socks into the shower. It's not nearly as funny without seeing those beacons of light in a sea of naked dudes trying to shower as fast as possible, now that I'm actually writing it out though. Story 51. In Navy boot camp, we were in school circle in the berthing, and our second RDC was teaching us a PowerPoint of some sort. We all had our recruit manuals and pens writing down notes for our test in a few days. One of my buddies was very fidgety, and sitting cross-legged for long periods of time, he would often start to fidget and wiggle around like a worm. He was especially frisky today, so I whispered to him, "Chill, man, chill. Click your pen a few times to help you fidget." He starts clicking, and I mean clicking. Click, 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 click. Our RDC started to twitch after every click until she lost it and beelined it to my row with my buddy next to me. He's still clicking away reading his book, and our RDC roared his name. He stood up so fast it was like he sat on a hot nail. She made him do push-ups and mountain climbers for half an hour. Then, after he was tired, she made him stand up in the back of the berthing and gave him 2 pens, one in each hand. He was told to hold his arms out to the side like a T and keep clicking until she finished the lesson. Fast forward an hour and a half and he's still clicking. She forgot about him, and our third RDC, somewhat nice, saw him when she walked in, stared at him, blinked a few times, and turned around and giggled. Our second RDC came back in PT uniform and told him to stop. We heard her and third RDC laughing in the fishbowl. Story 52. I had a female DS that put the entire company at attention. She then proceeded to pull a baggie out of her pocket and told us she found nut on the shower wall in which she used a spoon to collect the evidence. She was threatening that she was going to have it tested for DNA so she could identify the nasty male. Of course, nobody confessed. We also had a short Somali drill sergeant who had an accent. He did a health and welfare inspection of the men's barracks and found a life-size poster of a chick in a skimpy bikini folded up in Private Barry's locker. When he unfolded said poster, it was taller than him, and all you could see were his fingers and knuckles at the top of the poster. Then he started yelling, and as he yelled that it was contraband and it's not allowed in the barracks, the chick on the poster is moving and you couldn't see the DS at all. We all got smoked for laughing. Are people really out there nutting in the showers? Like, multiple people use those at once. Unless you mean you go there when no one else is there specifically to... Why am I thinking about this? I'm thinking about this too much. Moving on. Story 53. I had some very old school, very non-PC NCOs in my platoon. We had a no-knucklehead standing in formation one day while everyone was at attention waiting for the morning calls, holding a goddamn potted plant to his side. I went up to the soldier before Top came out and quietly asked him, why in the green thumb hell was he holding the plant in my formation? And the little crap yells at the top of his lungs, "To replace the oxygen I'm wasting, platoon sergeant!" It took every ounce of military bearing in my person not to lose my crap laughing. I had to later very amusedly tell my sergeants to keep their shenanigans to a minimum during formations. That is probably one of the best self-deprecating jokes I've ever heard. That guy sounds hilarious. Story 54. In boot camp, we had this kid that was trying hard to get out. He caused a lot of hell for us all by screwing up constantly. USMC boot camp is pretty funny when looking back. This was about halfway through 6 weeks. This kid was peeing in his rack every night trying to get an MHU discharge. Now, every night we did this ditty that involved hitting the top rack. The guy with the rack underneath the pier got as close to hitting it as he could without actually touching it. You could literally see it was soaked because of the wool blankets. DI asks, "Recruit Dew, why aren't you hitting the rack?" "It's, Covered in pee, sir. DI then pauses a sec and then just walks into the duty hut. Funniest thing I saw happen was we had a DI that was finishing up DI school and was assigned to us. This is like 7 to 8 weeks into boot camp when things start to normalize and the DIs screw with you a bit less. The DI is trying to screw with us one night and is running across the footlockers. The footlockers are made of plywood and were probably built 30 years before. He steps on one and it breaks, so he face plants into another. We all laugh our butts off at it. He sulks back into the duty hut and it's lights out. Another night, the same DI is doing hygiene inspection before lights out. This is like week 10 or 11, the end of the boot camp. Guys across from me are laughing. I start doing the what the hell gestures, and they point to this guy like 3 or 4 people down from me. I lean out and look, and this Russian kid has his balls hanging out. They kind of laugh when he gets to them, but he keeps on going. He gets to me and I freaking lose it. Only time I ever laugh to a DI's face. A few other guys laughed and he lost his crap, sulked into the duty hut, and once again, lights out. Story 55. Not a drill sergeant, and this didn't even happen in my platoon. But I heard this story from someone in 4th platoon after basic/AIT while we were in airborne school. Every platoon in every training regiment has that guy. The guy who screws up constantly and can't do a damn thing right. In 4th platoon, his name was Sheets. Horrible at PT, horrible at taking orders, horrible marksman, horrible everything. So everyone else in Sheets' platoon liked to give him crap. Every night in the barracks, 2 people had to be awake at all times. We called it fire duty. And every hour, 2 more people would wake up and relieve the last 2. Well, one night, the entire platoon decided to prank Sheets. So everyone on fire duty that night took turns weaving 550 cord through the bunk above Sheets and the bunk Sheets slept on, creating a cage around him. They then took a black marker and drew black circles around his eyes and hung a sign on his cage reading, "Wild raccoon, do not feed." In the morning, everyone woke up and Sheets was begging everyone to let him out, but instead they all got dressed, went to formation, PT, and then breakfast, leaving Sheets trapped the entire time. Even when they came back, they didn't let him out, and went about their business of cleaning their weapons or whatever. Then, Drill Sergeant shows up. Drill Sergeant comes in, sees Sheets and yells, "Toe the line!" Everyone jumps to attention. He points at Sheets and says, "What the hell is that?" And one of the privates responded, "It's a wild raccoon, Drill Sergeant. We're not supposed to feed it." I was told that the Drill Sergeant almost laughed, but he held it back. He then turned around and left the barracks, probably so he could laugh and tell the other drill sergeants. They stood at attention for an hour until Drill Sergeant came back. When he walked in, he said, "Why the hell are you still standing around at ease? And get him out of there." So they let Sheets out and never got in trouble for it. Story 56. Dated a drill instructor. I was a high school girls wrestling coach, and my big girl job was orchestrating grounded troops, blah blah. He and I got way too into the habit of screaming ridiculous things out of the blue, seeing as he was trained to. Hilarious guy, but I'd never seen him at work. One time, he specifically requested I visit him during drills. I don't know if this is legal or if he was serious, so I stayed invisible until he called me out by name. His problem was internal bickering and drama with his guys. He lamented at me about this for weeks. He addressed them, introduced me, and I was feeling lost as hell. "This here is Wendy. Since you're all acting like lost boys, Wendy here is going to tell you how to behave. And we respect women, isn't that right?" "Yes, sir." "Wendy here is a mama to a bunch of teenage girls. What do teenage girls do?" From formation, "Whine, sir. Make noise all the time, sir. Gossip, sir. Cry over boys, sir. Play with makeup, sir. Get PMS, sir," etc., etc. And that's what y'all have been doing, acting like little girls. Wendy is going to be our inspiration today, our spiritual guide. You will address Wendy as sir. "Yes, Wendy, sir." "You will love Wendy like your very own mother." "We love you, Wendy, sir." So I can be cruel and clever and all of that, but this was about momming and shame. I was out of my depth, but here we go. I told them during drills they were not allowed to leave formation or rest until one of them had brought up a legitimate qualm with another private and talked it out. Full volume. Then they got to buddy that person and tell them something vulnerable about themselves until they had something in common. At the end, they would call the private by name and tell everyone something they appreciated about them. My dude was facing away with his eyes closed, vibrating with laughter. I thought he was going to choke to death. Best day ever. And a handful of legit friendships were made that day. Now this is a top tier punishment. They're surrounded in this super macho culture all the time. The emotional turmoil they would feel from this is out of this world. And then also ends up being good for them. I mean, just look at that. OP said they may have formed some actual friendships. Win-win. It may not be your job, OP, but hey, sounds like you did pretty well. Anyway, that's the last story we have for today, and my voice is thankful for it. Holy. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I also hope you have a wonderful day or night wherever you are. I will see you in the next one.